my family loves lasagna, so whenever I make lasagna, I typically do about 4 pans and then I freeze them. So I'm going to show you how I do this. I buy my sauce already made in a jar. I like to use jar sauces when it comes to tomatoes and stuff like that. So I used to make my own tomato sauce, but this is organic, very reasonably priced, so that's what I use. I blend it down till it's real smooth. I add some fresh garden spinach. I don't want chunks in there at all. No tomato chunks, anything like that. And then I reduce it. So I'm going to keep an eye on this while I get everything else ready. I've got the heat on medium to medium high. I've got it going pretty good here. So I'm going to cover it with a splatter screen because I don't want it making a mess on my stove. I'll turn it down once it starts to boil, but I need to keep an eye on it. So meanwhile, I'm going to go ahead and brown 4 pounds of meat. So it's basically 2 pounds of hot Italian sausage and 2 pounds of grass-fed ground beef. And I'm going to go ahead and drain it and let it cool. While that's cooling, I'm going to saute 2 large onions, and then to that I'm going to add about 3 cloves of garlic. And at the beginning of every week, I mince down a whole entire bulb of garlic. I put it in olive oil and I keep it in my fridge just for times like this. So I'm going to put a generous amount of black pepper in here and saute all this down until it's about translucent the way it looks right now, and then add some fresh garden parsley. This is about 4 tablespoons of parsley. And then while that's cooling off, I'm going to go ahead and beat down my eggs. You can add 4 eggs if you want to. I'm using 3. My kid's mildly allergic to eggs, so I try not to overdo it on eggs. And then I'll add my eggs to 4 pounds of whole milk ricotta cheese and blend it in. Now I need to keep an eye on my sauce. I want to get it nice and thick, so I have to continue to check on it and make sure that it's thickening up and not burning, and continue to stir it. So back to my ricotta cheese, I'm going to add my cooled onions and the parsley and garlic mixture. And I'm going to add about 1 cup of Parmesan cheese, and then go ahead and give this a good mix. And then I also put all of my meat into a food processor and mildly pulsed it until it was nice and a fine ground. I don't want big lumps and chunks of meat in it. And then I set up our assembly station. So I basically have the ground beef and a sausage, and we have about 6 packs of 8 ounces of shredded mozzarella cheese. I have the ricotta cheese mixture. I have my sauce. And then I have about 4 boxes of the no-cook lasagna noodles. I love those. I just really like them. They're nice and flat and thin. And then we all get our own little station when we assemble the lasagna. So it makes it a lot of fun. The little ones will think they made the lasagna because they help put the cheese and everything on it. And so it's a lot of fun. Now I will show you how I assemble each pan so that you will see a little close-up of it. First I take my noodles, because I'm using these Pyrex dishes and they're tapered. I don't have a lasagna pan. I don't really know anybody that has 4 lasagna pans anyway. So, so I have to break off the very tip when I'm doing my bottom layer so that my noodles will fit in there, because it's more narrow than the top of the dish. Okay, so as I move them on up, I'll go ahead and on top of my noodles, I add my sauce, and then I'll spread that out to the edges so that the whole noodle's covered. I'll sprinkle it with some of the ground meat, and then I'm put on my shredded mozzarella cheese, and then the ricotta mixture. You don't really have to spread this out. Sometimes I just put a little dab here, a dab there, because what we're going to do is when we put the noodles back on top of it, we're going to give it a good kind of mash down on it. And I'll show you in just a second here. So put our noodles back on there and then flatten it out and give it some pressure. Your noodles might break when you do this. Just push it down and push out any air bubbles that might be down in there. Okay, and then back to the sauce. This is the final and top layer. Push it all out to the sides. Make sure your noodles will not dry out. And then we have a little bit more ground beef and sausage, and we have a little bit more cheese to put on there. And then I'm going to wrap these up with tin foil and then put the lid on them, and they're all going in the freezer. So when I need a quick, wonderful dish to pull out for the kids and no one's going to complain about dinner, this is what I go for. If it's a night where I need to just do something. Now, the main thing you got to be real careful about your lasagna is you want to make sure it's thoroughly thawed before you go to reheat it. And I'll show you how we reheat it here. So I pulled this out of the freezer. I pulled out a bag of rolls, and I pulled out a pan of lasagna. It's thoroughly thawed. It's been thawing for 2 nights. So I pulled it out one night before I went to bed and let it set out overnight. And then the next morning I put it in the refrigerator and let it continue to thaw until the next day. So you'll put it in the oven covered at 375 for about 30 minutes. And while that was baking, I went ahead and got my rolls ready, just in my little toaster oven pan. I have a little garlic sauce I like to put on those. And I will include a link where you can make your own homemade yeast rolls as well. And then after 30 minutes, I went ahead and added a little bit more cheese to the top of the lasagna and then cooked it uncovered for about 10 more minutes in the oven. And let it cool for 15 minutes. You really need to let your lasagna cool. And then it was ready to eat. And I added a little bit of Italian parsley to the top. And then, of course, it's not complete without a yeast roll, which kind of makes it so. So I hope you can try this recipe. And thank you so much for watching. More meat.
Yeah.
I'm going to start the next meat here.
There's
It's starting to look pretty good, actually.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, nothing better than good old pan
Even
of
though it's
lasagna.
not cooked, still looks good.
Yeah.
All right,
A
Jaden.
little bit of sauce.
Yes! Oops! Say this.